Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts and Coffee. It is Tuesday, June 23rd, and only a few days away from Forge. But first, I want to give you a recap of what's happening on Let's Talk Supply Chain this week. So this week, we have the Chief Ethics Officer of Airbnb who joined me on the show to talk about ethics and his new book, Intentional Integrity. And we talk about ethics in supply chain, ethics as a company culture, leadership, and what that means to your company and how to lead through ethics during this time right now. So go and check that out. That one is episode 121, wherever you subscribe to Let's Talk Supply Chain, or under podcasts at letstalksupplychain.com. Plus, we've got a lot of great things happening. Wednesday is our question of the week, and we want to know where you want to go on vacation. So we'll see you over on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram Wednesday morning for that. We've got a new Supply Chain Minute on Thursday. And then on Friday, we have a salute to our Women in Supply Chain series, as well as our Friday Funny. So I'm going to bring in our guests for today. We have Mike Cadieux. He is the founder of Procurement Foundry, and Martha Lumatete. And she is the head of strategic partnerships and innovation over at Southwest. I'm super excited to have them on Thoughts and Coffee today because Martha is going to be on a tech panel with us on Thursday. And obviously, Mike is my partner for, and they are actually putting on the Forge Supply Chain Virtual Conference on Thursday. So we want to talk about that. So good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Tuesday.
Awesome.
Happy Tuesday.
Do you want to just do a quick introduction of who you are in case the audience doesn't know? Martha, can we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Martha Lumatete, I work for Southwest Airlines, and I'm a business partner from technology to our businesses. And I have been in procurement, supply chain for 10 to 15 years, worked for various companies. Accenture, worked for Nuance Communications, worked for Sabre, which is also in the airline industry, and glad to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome. Thanks, Martha. Mike?
Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Cadieux. I'm, as Sarah said, the founder of Procurement Foundry, the fast-growing online micro community, collaboration community for supply chain and procurement practitioners. And we're sometime today, I think we're going to cross over 3,000 members. So I'm really excited about that, and really excited to partner up with Sarah on the upcoming Forge conference that we've had, which will be our second conference. And yeah, it's everything's going great.
Super exciting. Okay, well, why don't we talk about Forge? I think where we're going to start is obviously how you and I came together to bring on this virtual supply chain conference. You did an amazing job at the first Forge, designed specifically for procurement practitioners. And then we started talking about how we wanted to include supply chain in that. And we thought that we would, just reach out to the community and put together a really awesome lineup of speakers, which I think we've done a pretty good job at doing. I'm really excited for everybody to hear. Why don't you talk about some of the walkthroughs that you've been through just in the last week, and what people can expect from some of the panels? And then maybe skip over Martha's, and I'll let Martha talk about hers.
Yeah. So we when you do something like this, obviously you have to get a bunch of people together, and you have to talk about how they're gonna engage with each other, what they're gonna talk about, and we call those walkthroughs. And over the past week, we've been doing walkthroughs with all the panelists and all the speakers and the keynotes. At the beginning of the day, we've got a couple of keynotes. We did an amazing walkthrough with Peter Hall from the EDC, and he's a real thought-provoking economist about what's going on with supply chain. And I think that that's going to be just a really interesting keynote. And I think that he's going to be pretty interactive with Q&A, and And we've also told him about the fact that, after, if he runs out of time with the Q&A, he can go into our Slack community, into our networking boards. And that's really cool. There's a lot of stuff that happens in those networking boards. That was probably the one big aha moment for us from the last conference, was how interactive the Slack side is. So for those of you who don't know, we run our conferences through a sequence of Zoom sessions all day long. But then we also marry that up with a whole bunch of Slack channels for your networking and for interaction with a couple of the sponsors, which, by the way, we've got great sponsors for this event, including Ships. So thank you for that, Sarah. And I'll give the shameless plug to the sponsors right now. So thanks to the folks at Access Global Logistics, thanks to Suchi, thanks to Cloud Managed Services. They've really stepped up, and they actually have interactive booths, and they're doing items inside of their booths, kind of like mini sessions inside of their booths, and they're also doing some giveaways.
Yeah, giveaways. I was going to say.
Yeah, they're going to do some giveaways, but some really cool stuff. Daniel Stanton from the Mr. Supply Chain has a panel discussion on diversity in supply chain with David Burton, and I think that's going to be pretty amazing. Talking about not just checking the box with supply diversity, but really getting into it and helping grow the diversified supply chain and helping it grow. One really cool one that I think is interesting is a conversation that's going to take place around the last mile. So we've got a really interesting breakout session between 11 and 12 o'clock. I was actually in the walkthrough with Greg White from Supply Chain Now. He's going to be hosting a panel with the Chief Procurement Officer from Papa John's, and also Paul Elmer, who's formerly from Edible Arrangements, and talking about that last mile during COVID and what happened with curbside delivery, home side delivery. That was a pretty wild walkthrough to hear about what those guys are working on.
Yeah, that one I'm just going to jump in here, because that one they're going to be talking about, what the customer also is wanting to experience when you're delivering not only food, but product, and what that looks like, and how the expectations, I think, have kind of grown from before COVID to now.
Yeah.
Which is just mind blowing.
Yeah. And then I'm moderating a panel on disruption in supply chain associated with everything from the beauty industry. We've got Mercedes Romero from Ryder, who's going to talk a little bit about how rental logistics and things like that have been disrupted. And then we get into the afternoon sessions. We've got about an hour where our sponsors have got 30-minute sessions where they're going to talk about everything from their software to, I think you're going to do a meet and greet with the CEO of Suchi herself, which yep. I spoke to her. She's an amazing person who is a programmer by trade, but started in fashion and now has moved her product into all of supply chain, and expanding rapidly into all areas of supply chain management. And her product, Access Global Logistics, going to talk a little bit about sustainability in this warehouse and logistics, cloud managed services.
Before we go into the afternoon, I think we've got to talk about the tech panel that Martha's on, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Martha, tell us, what are you guys going to be talking about on your panel? I know that Eric Johnson is moderating that, so it's going to be a great discussion.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be a great discussion. So we are talking about shelfware, how organizations manage shelfware, how they view shelfware, and how to be able to, from a technical standpoint in supply chain, be able to adequately manage that. And so we have a great panel of discussion, and looking forward to seeing everybody. I hope people don't miss it, because they're going to come up with some really, really good pointers from that conversation. So I'm not going to give too much away, because I want people to come and
I want you to give some stuff away.
Yeah, we want them to get rid of those assets underneath the tables, as Mike would say. That's how we think of shelfware. It's an asset that you're stepping on underneath your desk, so you want to get rid of that. But yeah, it would be a great discussion.
I love it. I cannot wait. I'm super excited for yours. And just to give a little bit of a shout out to the audience before we go into the afternoon session, we've got a lot of people saying good morning. Good morning. Moise from Dallas, Texas. Pravin from India. Who else have we got? We've got Davin from Ontario, Canada. Freddie from Indonesia. Hello. Good morning. Mir from Iran. We've got Han from Vietnam and Josh. Good morning. Let's talk supply chain. Good morning, Josh, and Samuel from Panama as well. So thank you all for joining us. We're just going to start talking a little bit about the afternoon session. Maybe I can kick that off, Mike,
Absolutely.
because the afternoon is kind of, my baby, I guess, because I came up with the idea for the startup showcase. I just thought that in COVID, startups really haven't really been given the stage too much. And so we wanted to feature 9 of the top startup innovations in the afternoon. And DC Mansfergola is going to be moderating that. She is amazing. The startups are amazing. And they get 5 minutes each to tell you all about what they're working on and what you can actually take away or learn from their innovations as well. So super, super excited about that. And then my good friend, Irina Roska, will be doing a presentation on operations and customer experience in supply chain and how the two really need to work together to be able to bring together a successful future. And then last but not least, I'm kicking off the afternoon with our afternoon keynote with the head of global supply chain for Google. Her and I are going to be talking about supply chain risks. She is amazing, really great friend, really good leader in supply chain. You're not going to want to miss that. We're going to talk about the different components in supply chain, what the risks are, what you need to be looking for, either lessons learned or how to prepare from that. So there's going to be a lot of really, really good takeaways from that. And I'm super, super excited about that. So anything else we want to add, Mike or Martha, before we get into our supply chain topics? What do you think?
Yeah, probably one thing we need to add is how to get into the conference, right? So a couple of things. There's links both on your feed and my feed. The procurement conference, all Procurement Foundry conferences are actually free to Procurement Foundry members, and Procurement Foundry itself is free as well to all practitioners in the space. So Martha's a member, and we've got. Today we'll probably be crossing over 3,000 members, so today's a pretty historic day for us. Where I think last night we were within like 30 or 40 people, and so if you go to the website, there's still time for you to register for Procurement Foundry, and everyone that gets registered for Procurement Foundry, we are registering for the event as well, and we'll send you your registration information as well. So if you go to www.procurementfoundry.com and fill out the membership request form. We will put we will review your application because we vet everybody that comes in as a member. It's a buy side only community. Even lots of people aren't in there that want to be in there. We shut down probably 1,000 so far. So if you come to Procurement Foundry, the website, and click on the membership thing, we'll get you free membership, which will get you free access. If you're not a practitioner, you're on the supply chain and you want to come in, there's links to Eventbrite so that you can come in. And I think it's $99 for a seat, right? Which, $99 for an entire day with this community and these speakers. I think the keynote with the gentleman from EDC is going to probably be Peter Hall. Is probably worth $99 just to listen to him for 45 minutes. The rest of the day's content will be free to you. So really excited. Come in and join. We're still got the event's still open. We can still fit you in with registration, and we're excited to have you.
Yeah, and we've got some. Colin Russell just put up a question: has startups funding been positively or negatively affected by COVID? I think that's a really great question and something that you can ask the startups if you're going to join us on Thursday. They're each going to have a Slack channel of their own. So I would suggest that you go into those Slack channels and talk to them about it, because I think it varies depending on where they are in the funding process, what part of the industry that they're in, and what VCs they've been talking to. That's just my take on it. But again, I would go into the Slack community on Thursday. Actually, they're there right now. If you already have your ticket, you can go in and talk to them right now in their Slack channels to find out how that's going. So yeah, Colin, I would suggest that you do that. All right. So now it's time for some supply chain topics. Just so everybody knows, on the Forge, we have put the link to registration on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you want that registration link, it is in there. So now, where are we going to start? Why don't we start with Southwest? Because I think that this is a great, I didn't get the link from you, so maybe I won't share my screen, Martha, but unless it's in, is it in the private chat?
No, I don't think it came through.
All good.
Yeah.
I thought that since we had Martha on Thoughts and Coffee this morning, we could talk about the airline industry and talk about what's been happening through COVID. I know there's been a lot of questions, especially on the passenger side. But I really think it's fascinating how cargo has been able to really help the airlines, really succeed during this time. So why don't we talk about that? How is that going? What does that look like for Southwest?
So, I mean, not just for Southwest, but I think overall for the airlines in North America as well as globally, cargo has become a focal point of focus for organizations in order to transition through the COVID-19. Obviously, because as you all know, April was a really, really bad month for a lot of airlines, including Southwest Airlines. We were at a low capacity, flying almost empty planes, April, May. And so we've been seeing a lot of increase in our passengers as far as booking. There's been a lower cancellation rate from our passengers. And so during that time when we were not able to fly, we were doing a lot of cargo as far as our planes. And so this is not just Southwest Airlines, but American Airlines, Delta, Lufthansa. And so typically 50% of the world's cargo is carried in the bellies of the plane. And so some airlines have had to actually restructure their planes to make them cargo planes because that's not something they do. So typically cargo is about 3 to 4% of the revenue of an airline. So majority of your revenue will come from passengers. So even though this has been a great opportunity, we still need to be able to grow our customers being able to book flights and to book their vacations and to book their business meetings so that we can be able to fly them. And I would say that when it comes to cargo, it has been a great place for airlines to showcase their capability and to be able to address an ad hoc need in the market by being able to supply PPE, by being able to supply medical supplies, but also by being able to transport telecommunication equipment for folks that are working from home right now to support the economy as we've transitioned from people being in the offices and now working from home. And so you have e-commerce packages as well that are being transported by airlines, where before that was not something that they may have done as part of their business. And because of COVID-19, what has happened is you have an issue where there's a supply problem. And typically PPEs and those bulky materials are shipped. They're not sent out. They're not transported by air. But because of the urgency with COVID-19, the only option is air because air is the fastest. And so this has been a great opportunity for Southwest Airlines, for other airlines to participate in correcting an area in our economy that has been such a deep need, and being able to be part of what is hopefully recovery phase as we go through the next quarter in the airline industry. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, talk about innovation, right? I think that the
Yes.
airlines have been able to really transform their assets, which is the planes themselves, and taken it from passenger to cargo to really pivot so that, you're able to move more cargo and really move the PPE that has been needed on front lines. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
thank you to the airlines for doing that, because I think that, with the decrease on the passenger side, it could have been a lot worse if you
Yes.
hadn't have pivoted and shown the
Yes.
innovation and the agile, and it really just goes to show in any industry the resiliency and what people can really do if they work together and figure out how to use their assets for that.
Absolutely. And I would completely agree with you on that as far as resiliency and ability to be agile. And I mean, I think Southwest Airlines as an organization has been leading in that facet. I mean, this is not the first, this is not the first, massive issue we are having. I mean, we've gone through 9/11, we've gone through other scenarios where the
Right.
airline has been able to be flexible, to be agile, and to be able to come out on top in terms of how they have managed the crisis. So yet again, this has proven to be an opportunity for Southwest Airlines to prove its reliability, one, and it's also its market share, its stronghold within the US, because typically we fly locally. We're not an international airline. And so our resiliency just keeps going up. And one thing I would like to mention is the Southwest Airlines promise. So outside of the cargo is making sure that our passengers are kept safe. And so that's one thing I will reiterate on this is the Southwest Airlines promise to not only make sure that we get our cargo to our customers on time, but to also keep our customers and our passengers and our employees safe with the Southwest Airlines promise. And this is specific to COVID-19 safety.
Yeah.
So
And
safety first.
yeah, that is a huge deal right now. And obviously glad to hear that that's happening. I mean, I've seen lots of discussion in the news, no mask, no
Yes.
seat. It's a
Yes.
lot to navigate and try to figure out. I mean, think about it from a logistics standpoint, right? It's just logistics all over. So I'm going to move on to the Unilever article that I posted. I think it was the end of last week, or maybe it was over the weekend. Mike, did you see this? Unilever's climate plan. They're going to be taking emissions from supply chain.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm not surprised by it, but I think it's really innovative. I mean, it's really interesting.
Well, and I think it's about time. So in this article, they talk about scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Now, scope 3 are the emissions that are caused by supply chain. So they're talking about raw
Yep.
materials and suppliers' processing activities, and by the consumers who use the company's products. That's the first time I've kind of seen consumers rolled into sort of that company emissions, carbon footprint type issue and challenge. And so if you read this article, and we'll share the link in the post a little bit later, or on the post a little bit later. But if you read this, Unilever is saying that they're going to reduce scope 1 and scope 2 of greenhouse gas emissions by 100% by 2030. But what's really interesting is that the rest of it, which it actually is 96%, that is held in scope 3, which is the emissions which are generated by supply chain and retail and consumers. Consumers are actually 66% of that. So I'd like to get a little bit more information, I think, from them as to what they are, considering part of that consumer piece. But what they're saying is they are committing to net zero emissions from all their products by 2039, from the sourcing of materials up to the point of sale of our products. That is huge. Like, I don't even know how they're going to do that. They must have some massive plan in place for that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the first time I've ever seen a company start to tackle their customer, especially in consumer packaged goods. Usually once it's out the door, it's somebody else's problem, and you got to worry about what's in your own backyard. whether it's manufacturing plants or tier two manufacturers in your supply chain of your goods and services. But to extend it out to the consumer population is going to be pretty interesting to see how they roll it out. And what I think will be interesting is, okay, so Unilever has done this as you know, the 800-pound gorilla in consumer packaged goods, and who's going to follow down that path with them, you know? It'll be interesting to see what they roll out for a program for sure, and how they get their consumers of all of their different brands to actually kind of jump in on this initiative.
Well, and they have 70,000 products. I mean, that is a
Yeah.
huge undertaking. And Martha, being in the airline industry, obviously airlines and steamship lines are going to be a big part of that on the transportation side. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but is Southwest sort of thinking about the carbon footprint, sustainability, environmental issues as we come out of COVID?
I mean, as an airline, we're always thinking about that. We're always thinking
Yeah.
about, how we can better leave a footprint from carbon and how we can be greener. So that's definitely a focus for any airline, for Southwest as well. And I think not just because of COVID-19, but just as a general rule, that's something that you want to focus in on as an airline.
Absolutely. And I'm glad to hear that. You're probably going to be part of Unilever's massive undertaking of reducing those emissions by 2030. But good for them. I think that this is great. There's a little bit more information in the article about what they're saying is the consumer part of that scope 3 emissions. So go and check out that article. Last but not least, we are going to talk about building better supply chains for the future. Now, I know I kind of sent this over to you a couple of days ago. Hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at this article. What did you think of this, Mike?
Again, I think everything you sent me is really thought provoking. I think that the digitalization, and they key in on the digitalization a little bit of the supply chain, and it's really interesting to see what folks are doing to not only just give it lip service, but to actually start to deploy it in their space, and the changes that they're making to their operations. And then at the same time, they're grappling with the changes to the COVID side of it as well. So I thought it was interesting. I think I tagged it up on LinkedIn. I was like, hey, I'm trying to get, when you send me the supply chain stuff, I'm trying to send it over to my procurement people at the same time and say, hey, make sure you get some eyes on this. Our cousins are doing some amazing things. I consider the supply chain guys and the procurement ladies to be cousins, and I'm like, I need to get a family reunion going, which is kind of what we're trying to do with Procurement Foundry. Actually, that's odd.
Well, I mean, Mike, sorry, I was going to
no, go ahead.
ask Mike a question. Mike, wouldn't you say that because of COVID-19, that a lot of organizations have been forced to actually digitalize faster than they had initially intended, and the footprint where it was, say, last quarter and now it's completely different? What would be your thoughts to that has phase?
Yeah, I think anytime you're forced into a digitalization like this, it obviously starts with the workplace and the employees, and just the day-to-day operations of having a meeting and learning things like Zoom and things like that. But at the same time, now all of a sudden, because it's digital, I would say that it's starting to trickle down into the processes and even some of the systems. I mean, think about just recruiting and hiring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about how recruiting and hiring was done in the past, and now think about how recruiting and hiring is done now almost 100% virtually at this point, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
systems that are popping up to do that, and the processes that are popping up to do that. And if you didn't have an applicant tracking system, and you were just using LinkedIn, everybody's running to get applicant tracking systems as fast as possible and deployed, which means they need to upgrade their architecture. And that's just staff. That doesn't include what you need in supply chain. Yeah, yes, and yes. I mean, every aspect of it. I think there's a lot of, I heard something in the last conference, which was really interesting. Someone, I think the previous, one of the previous keynotes said something to the effect of, and I believe it's a Winston Churchill quote, never let a good crisis go to waste, right?
Yes.
No, that's Albert Einstein.
Oh, it was Einstein?
It's
I thought
Einstein.
I'm sorry.
I love
I'm
it.
sorry. I apologize.
I love it. I
I,
love it.
But
thought
we do like Churchill.
I thought it was Churchill, but whoever it was, it's great. Which is like, it's like, hey man, lots and lots of innovation happen at time of crisis, and I think we're going to see that, across all aspects of the supply chain with the digitalization of solutions and data security, and just the infrastructure that goes behind the supply chain is massive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
go ahead.
no, I was going to say, so before you move on to example, so would you call it an evolution, or would you call this a transformation?
I would call it a transformation. I think it's a transformation. I think that I mean, just look at what, and I don't mean to keep going back to Procurement Foundry, but look at what's happening inside of Procurement Foundry, right? We've created a digital ecosystem where people all around the world can collaborate. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. There's people here from all over the world listening to us talk right now, right?
Yes.
And inside of Procurement Foundry, we've got 100 different channels where people are talking about supply chain and procurement all day long. And now we're hosting virtual conferences, right? We got a virtual conference on Thursday. I mean, virtual conferences, people scoffed at them 4 months ago. Now I can't get them spun up fast enough, right? So just how we're starting to engage, network, collaborate is completely changing. I mean, I'm watching Procurement Foundry as I'm talking to you right now, and there's active conversations taking place this morning on 6 or 7 different topics, including someone's looking for information in the logistics room. So I'm like, okay, this is the new norm. The new norm is, and the other thing too is, I think COVID has caused the need for the macro networks of the Twitters and the LinkedIns and the Instagrams of the world. I think there's a massive need now for micro communities, which is, okay, I need to have, and that could be 50 people, it could be 50,000 people, but at least it doesn't have all the chatter and the noise of one of the macro communities like LinkedIn has today. And trust me, LinkedIn has its place, and we love LinkedIn. I don't want to say anything bad about that, but I think that there's just so much noise on LinkedIn now. Sometimes you need just a quiet place to talk to some peers. So
Yeah, peer-to-peer. I was going to say peer-to-peer conversation, right? That's I think the biggest aspect right now.
Yeah, and it's
no question about
invaluable right now. It's so invaluable right now as organizations try to navigate this new crisis. So, I mean, I think it's an opportune time for us to share how we're managing it and how we can, copy that over to our organization. So I think it's incredible, Mike. I agree with you completely.
I mean, there's a COVID room inside of Procurement Foundry with like 800 people in it, and they're all talking about go back to work strategies, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see. It's almost like a hive initiative where everybody's working on a best practice piece.
Yeah.
There's 50, 60 people collaborating on what they're all doing to get to a best practice sequence. Like we're going back to work. Do we provide gloves? Do we not provide gloves? Like that's one of the big questions. Like, what do we provide PEE to our employees who are asking to commute back into the cities or not?
Yeah.
Just that question alone.
And how do you navigate the elevators with only 2 to 4 people allowed in an elevator at a time?
Yeah.
I think I also heard that in New Jersey, the fridge can't be plugged in. You can't have a coffee maker. You can't have a microwave, and you can't have a water cooler. So what do we do about people's lunches, right? Are they having to buy it every day? Are they having to bring their own water? Right? That's an expensive tour back into work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pantry supply industry, and I happen to know one of the leaders in that space, the pantry supply industry, and I haven't spoken to them. I don't know what's going on with pantry supply. I'm assuming it's going to be just horribly down, but at the same time, is there a place to pivot off of that and potentially do, I think pantry services is probably down, but, Grubhub and home delivery is up. So, how does that all balance out? Do you bring in a catering service to cater lunch and then wipe it all down and get it out of there. I don't know. I'm not sure where that is, but that's got to be really, really tricky.
Yeah.
I mean, not having a water cooler. That's just insane. To think that there isn't going to be a water cooler.
They don't want people to. They don't want people to congregate. Well, I think that we could talk about this all day, but I did promise the audience that we would end at 10:30. We're a little bit over that 5 minutes. We've got some really great quotes and comments from people over on social media. Tim Ingram said the diversification of supply chain is essential. The M&A of 3PL's distribution vendors in many markets has hurt the footprint of supply chain. So great. We've got people from India, Destin from Congo, Joseph from Zambia, and so many more. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to include the links to everything that we talked about today in the posts. I did want to mention that last article that I showed you from Supply Chain Brain did talk about how procurement and supply chain management are working together, and I thought that was pretty cool. So we'll definitely share that link with you in the post so you can go and check that out. Thank you guys for joining me today. I'm super excited for Forge on Thursday. I can't wait to see you there and hear what you guys have to say, hear from all the speakers. We hope that everybody in the audience can join us. And again, we've included the link in the posts on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
See you
everybody.
Thursday.
See you Thursday.